Welcome back to another episode of Doodling Through Education. For my CC students, this is Cycle 1, Week 3, History. For everyone else, that just means that we're talking about the Greek and Roman gods and a little bit of the mythology surrounding that. It's important as Christians to learn about the Greek and Roman gods because then we can fully understand the culture of ancient Roman Greece. But also as Christians, we know that these are just myths and not truth. We know there is only one God, and he sent his son to die on the cross to save our sins, and he wants a personal relationship with all of us. So with that in mind, we can dive into this video with the correct perspective. Before we do so, be sure to jump on over to doodlingthrougheducation.com and download that workbook. You can purchase it on that website. It has been designed to match up with these videos to help further your understanding on these certain topics. And there's a fun worksheet in today's where you get to make your own mythological character. So I think you guys will really enjoy it. Without further ado, let's start doodling. This week, we are going to talk about the Greek and Roman gods. Many of the Roman gods were borrowed from the Greek gods, and so in that sense, most are similar in their characteristics, but there is some differences, and we'll talk about those differences in today's video. The reason this happened was because Rome actually originated from the fall of Greece. Ancient Greece was dominant in the Mediterranean for hundreds of years, but then Rome came in and conquered Greece and became the dominant power in the region. So let's dive in and talk about some of the Greek and Roman gods and about their characteristics that this culture attributed to them. First, let's talk about Zeus. Zeus was the ruler of all the other gods. He was a sky and weather god, and for all intents and purposes is identical to the Roman god Jupiter. He was the god that was thought of as the sender of thunderstorms, which included the rain and the lightning and the winds that came with it. And he is thought to have his traditional weapon of a thunderbolt. They thought that Zeus was the father of not just all gods, but also all men, and ruled over heaven. Zeus was also the leader of all of the wars that the gods had with other beings. It was thought that heaven, where Zeus resided, was located on the top of Mount Olympus, which was the highest mountain in Greece, and that the other gods lived there with him under his power. They also believed that from the top of Mount Olympus, he could observe everything that men did and governed them in this way. They believed he could reward good deeds and punish evil deeds. Next, let's talk about Hera. Hera was a goddess, and just as Zeus was known as the king of the gods, she was known as the queen of the gods. She was the wife of Zeus, and in mythology, she is often portrayed as being a very jealous person. She is the main goddess of marriage, family, childbirth, and women. Now, in Roman culture, they viewed her as Juno, and there were a few differences between Hera and Juno. In Greek culture, Hera was portrayed as, like I said, very jealous, and she often plotted revenge with no mercy to those who did wrong to her, whereas Juno is often portrayed as being quite a bit more gentle and loving and not so violent. Next, let's talk about Ares. Ares was the ancient Greek god of war and courage. In Greek culture, he was not very popular, and many people did not really worship him. One of the reasons that it is thought that he was pretty unpopular was because he had a very quick temper and loved conflict. He was also seen as someone who enjoyed brutal aspects of warfare. Now, on the Roman side of things, they saw this god as Mars. And although they were both gods of war, they were different. For Greeks, Ares was an unpredictable, war-hungry type god, whereas in Roman culture, Mars was more proud and viewed as more of a protector. So Ares was just the god of war and battle, while Mars was often viewed as the god of war and battle, but also of wisdom. Next, let's talk about the Greek god Aphrodite. In ancient Greek mythology, Aphrodite was the goddess of love and beauty. Comparatively, in Roman culture, this goddess was named Venus and was pretty similar to Aphrodite, but Venus was also the goddess of victory and battle. In both instances, her powers included love and desire, and she even had a belt that had the power to cause others to fall in love with the one who wore it. And in Greek mythology, different gods or goddesses would borrow this belt from time to time to make other people or gods fall in love with them. It was thought that Aphrodite had the ability to make it so that if a couple was fighting, they would fall in love again. Now, let's move on to the Greek god Hermes. Hermes had many roles in Greek mythology, one of them being the messenger god. He also would lead people down to Hades, which is the underworld in Greek mythology, which is where people would go, they thought, when they died. And he is also considered the god of travelers, business, good luck, and of thieves. Because of this, he was thought to be quite mischievous and had a spirit of deceitfulness about him. One of his main skills was that he could move very, very fast and was the fastest of the gods, and because of this, he would carry messages for the gods. Now, in the Roman culture, Hermes was considered to be named Mercury, and he was the god of commerce and is often shown wearing a purse. But Mercury and Hermes both are typically pictured wearing winged shoes. What was different between Hermes and Mercury is Mercury was often seen as a mediator between the gods and the mortals. Mercury was also seen as the god that oversaw messages in general, not just for gods, but for people, and he oversaw the sending of goods and messages. So he was thought to kind of be a mailman of sorts. Next, let's talk about the Greek god Athena. Athena was the goddess of wisdom, war, and the crafts. She was the favorite daughter of Zeus and is thought to be one of the wisest and courageous of the Olympian gods. Athena was thought to be very rational and had a lot of good strategy, and so was worshipped due to the amount of war that resided over the region during this time. Unlike Ares, who was her brother, who was very angry and violent, Athena was often portrayed as being cool and collected. The Roman counterpart Minerva is quite similar to Athena, but there are a few differences. Minerva was also the goddess of war, but it was also believed that Minerva could control the weather as well and may be depicted as holding a thunderbolt as well. This is a very clear difference from Athena because Athena was never associated with the weather. And last, let's go ahead and talk about the Greek god Poseidon. Poseidon was the god of the sea and of water in general. He was also thought to have created horses and is represented as the god of earthquakes as well. Because the Greeks often sailed, they worshipped Poseidon because of the destructive power of the sea. He was also considered as the most powerful god after Zeus. Now, in Roman culture, this god would be the god Neptune, but is pretty different when you compare him to Poseidon. Neptune was also the Roman god of the sea, but he was also the god of fresh water, whereas Poseidon is not the god of fresh water. And this makes sense because the Greeks often sailed, whereas the Romans were typically land-based. In Greek mythology, Poseidon is a much more powerful and important god than in Roman culture when compared to Neptune. And that's all we have for today. Go ahead and go through those 4 worksheets found in your workbooks, one a day, and I think it will really help to expand your knowledge on this subject. And then go ahead also, I believe it's page 4 for this week, make your own mythological character. If you want to share that with me, you can go ahead and drop a comment below, or you can even send me a message through the Doodling Through Education website if you would like. I would love to see it. And on that note, remember to be kind, follow God's will, and take care. Bye.